Ethical governance. Sorry. Before we discuss ethical governance, we need to be very much clear regarding what is the idea of what is the government and what is governance. So, government can be defined as a system or an you can say an ensemble of institutions or the legal framework by which any group or any community is governed. Government. So, government is an ensemble of institutions or the legal framework, some values which may have evolved over a period of time by which a society, any group or community is governed. Then, what is governance? Government is more like a potential energy. When the government comes in action, this is known as governance. So, governance more particularly refers to the process. Governance is related to the process by which the institutions of the government or various subsystems in the system of government they exercise their authority. Why do they exercise their authority? To discharge certain responsibilities. What kind of responsibilities? Responsibilities related to welfare, development, security of the state. It all depends on the nature of the state, whether it is a warfare state or it is a welfare state. A scope of governance may be very much expanded or may be very much contracted. The scope of governance depends on the nature of the state and nature of the government. This point is clear. So we are discussing ethical governance in the context of a modern democratic welfare state. In a modern democratic welfare state, the scope of governance is very broad. Lot many things are expected from the government. It is just not enough to maintain law and order and to go for war management or collection of revenue, and the system goes on and on. It is not like that. In a modern democratic welfare state, the state has the government has multifarious responsibilities: the public health, education, or agriculture, or irrigation, or the industry, or environmental protection, then social justice, women empowerment, child development, the law and order, defense, security. Lot many things are there. It is an ensemble of it is a collectivity of different kind of functions being carried out by different types of institutions. So when we talk about government and governance in the context of a modern democratic welfare state, it is a very complex phenomena. If you see the structure of the government, it is mind-bogglingly differentiated. It is functionally and structurally differentiated. To carry out different types of activities and different types of functions, you have different types of institutions. You have ministries and departments, you have corporations, you have companies, you have tribunals, you have various directorate or secretariat, and there's several advisory bodies and institutions, boards, commissions, all put together. They carry out different kinds of activities and functions. So this is known as governance. When the government comes in action, it is known as governance. And governance more particularly refers to the process by which the institutions of the state, institutions of the government, they exercise their authority in furtherance of their respective goals, purpose and objectives. If different institutions, they accomplish their respective goals, purpose and objectives, that in collectivity leads to accomplishment of ultimate objective. Ultimate objectives to establish a modern, to achieve social justice, economic justice, political justice, that we expect from a welfare state. But social justice, economic justice and political justice cannot be accomplished in a straight way by working for that. You will have to identify some goal, purpose and objectives. Objectives are required to be broken down into sub-purpose and objectives. You have to work for public health or education or infrastructure, law and order, security, defense, etc., environmental protection, etc. Lot many things you are required to do. Accordingly, you are required to establish various or different types of institutions. So what is suitable for one purpose and objective may not be suitable for the other. Just like human body. There are different organs, different subsystems. They differ from one another in their in the nature of muscles or structure, in their functions. Why? Because the different organs differ from one another. Why? Because they have to carry out different kinds of activities and they have to accomplish different types of goals. Muscles of your eyes are very delicate and the muscles of your legs are very strong. They have to bear the burden of entire body, something like this. So same is the case with the government and governance. So governance Governance brings within its scope different types of activities. You have quasi-legislative functions, quasi-judicial functions. You have regulatory functions or adjudicative, or developmental functions, ideological functions, and others. In simple words, when you talk about government, more particularly executive government, they are involved in different kinds of activities like formation of smaller bylaws, rules, and regulations. They are involved in adjudication of disputes. They are also involved in developmental functions to work for health or education, infrastructure. A lot many things are there. Then they are also involved in regulatory functions. Think about TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, or Competition Commission of India, then Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India. So different institutions, they regulate and control affairs in different sectors, different areas of activities. So you have regulatory functions, you have adjudicative functions, you have legislative functions. So you frame rules, regulations, and bylaws. You also get it executed. Then you also adjudicate disputes. Then you have many reconciliatory functions. Whenever there is a conflict of interest, that is also required to be managed. Then developmental functions to carry out different types of activities to bring a real change in the day-to-day life of the people. Health, education, all put together. Advisory functions, you give advice. Different institutions are there to give advice or give recommendations to the government regarding policy making or law making in one or other areas. So governance is a very complex phenomena. And governance, the scope of governance is gradually over a period of time has undergone more and more of expansion. Why? Because society never remains static. Society keeps changing and keeps evolving. Rising needs and aspirations and expectation of society, it demands new kinds of goods and different types of goods and new goods and services from the government. And accordingly, a new institution is required to be established to provide a new set of services. And when you establish a new institution, it means a law is required to be enacted or new order is required to be passed. Then institution, then further the institution carries out certain activities and functions. Then you will have some kind of some limitations or some kind of byproduct will be there which you would not like. To address that, again something else is required to be done. So you have a law, you have an institution provide goods and services, you collect feedback, correctives are required to. Overall governance is a very complex phenomena, there is no doubt about it. A scope of governance, nature of governance, or other matters associated with it will, it assumes one or other shape depending on the nature of society it operates within. So you have government, you have governance, and this is the scope of governance, and this is a public at large. What is the impact of governance? Such institutions, different institutions, one is the exercising authority, they are carrying out different kinds of activities and functions, but finally आपने हासिल क्या किया? So what is the impact of governance on on the people at large? Then what is the defining characteristic of that governance? Accordingly, we talk about one other models of governance. Accordingly, you can say that governance, ethical governance. It is not necessary that there will be only one model. So one model of governance may accommodate the attributes of different models of governance. आप मेरी बात समझ रहे हैं? So you have government, you have governance. Governance means exercise of authority. It is the process. Then there is an impact on public at large. What has been the nature of impact? To what extent you have been able to bring, progressive change or desirable change in the day-to-day life of the people. And then what is the defining characteristic of governance? Method, technique, the process that you involve. It means ends as well as means. Both of them are required to be taken into consideration, and accordingly we decide whether it is a good governance or bad governance. If it is a good governance, then again, good governance is a very broad idea and concept. Within the bounds of it come various attributes of good governance. What is clear? So you have a good governance, then within the bounds of it you can say, depending on the nature of governance, you can say it is a ethical governance, or for that matter it is a proactive governance. So there are different models: ethical governance, of proactive governance, or enterprising governance, catalytic governance. Then you have democratic governance, then bureaucratic governance, different types of, then digital governance or governance you can say. So different models. Similarly, you have ethical governance. So you just need to focus first of all on governance. What is governance? What is the scope of governance? And then you examine the first word, ethical. To what extent this governance reflect To what extent this governance, collective exercise of authority by the institution, to what extent it reflects the ethical and moral standards of the society, to what extent it reflects the ethical and moral standards set for the administration or for the government, under the law, under the constitution, to what extent it reflects those ethical moral standards in the process of providing goods and services to the society or exercising authority. Accordingly, it may be called ethical governance or not so much ethical governance. So a governance can be called ethical governance only when this governance reflects the spirit of, or reflects these ethical standards. So ethical standards of the society, then ethical standards set for the government under the constitution, under various laws. So governance imbued with these ethical standards, governance accompanied by these ethical standards, will define whether it is ethical governance or not. The first is honesty and integrity. Remember, when we talk about government, or when we talk about governance, it is a broader concept than administration. When we talk about government includes both political leadership as well as both political leadership and administrative leadership. So ministers on the one hand and executives, bureaucrats, civil servants on the other. So it means government is a broader concept. So when we talk about ethical governance, so in overall what we are talking about governance, it means exercise of authority collectively by political and administrative leadership. Entire political administrative system, that's government, and then it is exercising authority. Point is clear? So in the government, when a government exercises authority, and that is governance, so governance must reflect, must conform to these ethical standards, then only you can say it is ethical governance. So first of all, you have honesty and integrity. So honesty and integrity, that honesty means that transparency or truthfulness. Then integrity is more concerned with intrapersonal integration, conjunction between what you profess and what you practice. Integrity is a very broad concept that includes honesty as well. So honesty and integrity, this is the first requirement when you think of ethical governance. So those who are involved in governance, the group of people, select group of individuals, or you say that elected ones and the selected ones. You have political leadership, the elected ones, and the administrative leadership, selected ones. Political leadership, administrative leadership put together, when they exercise authority, they must reflect honesty and integrity, a conjunction between what they profess and what they practice. They conform to, they adhere to that individual private code of morals, and they also conform to the code of morals or ethical standards which has been set for that organization in which they are functioning. They also reflect due concern, or they reflect in their behavior those fundamental principles and values which are enshrined in the preamble of the Constitution. The law within the bounds of which they are working, they should also conform to the code of conduct or ethical standards as expected under such law. And they have to listen to their inner voice as well. It is just not enough to conform to law. You have to conform to your private code of morals. Point clear? Inner voice. You have to listen to that. So honesty and integrity, there are lot many things that come within the bounds of it. Clear? Then you have impersonality and rule of law. Impersonality and rule of law. Governance, as I said, is a very complex. It is a complex set of affairs, different kinds of activities. So political leadership or administrative leadership, both of them are expected to reflect concern for rule of law. No room for personal whims and fancies. No room for personal prejudice, personal presumption, personal subjective notion of right and wrong. What is clear? Impersonality and rule of law. This is also a part of ethical governance. Very, very integral part of ethical governance. So your ministers or the bureaucrats, they should conform to the requirement of law. Whatever be the situation, circumstances, they can be contrary impulses, but you will have to overcome that, and you should stick to adhere to the requirements of law, rules and regulation. That is impersonality and rule of law. So system is being run by persons, but the persons are not reflecting their personal concerns, personal prejudice, personal passion. they are appointed to a position, they are exercising authority of that position in keeping with the requirements of law. So, impersonality and rule of law. In democracy, democracy and rule of law go side by side. In democracy, nobody can be a monarch, or the president or prime minister of Chief Justice of India, nobody is monarch. If there is something which is monarch, it is law, the supreme law of the land, constitution, and then other laws. You have to conform to that. So when you carry out activities, when you discharge your responsibilities, when you exercise authority in keeping with the requirements of law, so you are respecting the will of, you respect the will of the entire population, people of India, because the law carries the consensual strength of the entire society. Society is 140 crore people. Their representatives are sitting in the parliament, 776 something members in Lok Sabha, Raj Sabha. Then at the top you have constitution. Are getting a point? So it means if the law is enacted by the parliament, so this law carries the consensual strength of the 140 crore people. So if you violate that law, your personal whims and fancies are allowed to overcome that law. So this is not ethical. You have to respect the will of the society. Law is important. If there are any kind of limitations in law, yes, you can raise up this matter. No doubt, you can seek amendments in that. You can express your, you can share your problem with your seniors. There are other constitutional ways and means, but as long as law is there, as far as possible, you have to conform to that. And if you defy, there should be genuine, cause or justification. You should keep within the bounds of law, within the bounds of constitutional means. So this is also a part of ethical governance, impersonality and rule of law. One clear. When you carry out activities, when you discharge your responsibilities in keeping with law, it is not just conformity to a letter or a sentence written in the law book. You are actually respecting the will of the people of this country, because their will, the consensus is expressed through every law legitimately passed by the parliament or the constitution. Point clear? Next is objectivity. Objectivity is a measure of degree to which your actions remain free from your personal or subjective notion of right and wrong, your personal experience in life. Are getting a point? Objectivity means that whosoever you are, आप एक IAS ऑफिसर हैं या आप मिनिस्टर हैं या आप एक जज हैं, आपके सामने जब कोई विषय लाया जाएगा, कोई भी सब्जेक्ट मैटर जिस पर कि आपको डिसीजन लेना है, तो उस पर डिसीजन लेते वक्त आपकी अपनी निजी ज़िंदगी में आपका क्या अनुभव रहा है, निजी ज़िंदगी में क्या अनुभव आपका है, आपके अपने पर्सनल नोशन ऑफ राइट एंड रॉन्ग क्या है, आपकी अपनी समझ में सब्जेक्टिव जो आपका नॉलेज है वो राइट एंड रॉन्ग क्या है, ये बातें मान्य नहीं रखती। आज आपका मूड कैसा है, आप समाज के बारे में क्या सोचते हैं, आपके सब्जेक्टिव आइडियल्स मान्य नहीं रखते। दैट शुड नॉट बी अलाउड, दिस थिंग शुड नॉट बी अलाउड टू इंटरफियर with your sense of justice. The subject matter for decision making which has been brought in front of you, you should examine that subject matter within the bounds of the law. You are exercising authority, so within the bounds of law and within the bounds of known principles, you are supposed to exercise authority and you have to deal with that subject matter. Your personal likes, dislikes, preferences, your personal prejudice should not be allowed to interfere with your sense of justice, with your judgment, with your decision. That is objectivity. Objectivity has great objectivity has a great unifying value, and objectivity is also concerned with impersonality. If different officials, they start taking decisions on the same subject matter based on their personal likes, dislikes and preferences, then there will be wholesome chaos in the system. The same subject matter will have different types of responses from different officials. So the element of certainty and predictability will be lost. Point is clear? To that extent, the trust and confidence of the people in administration, that will be adversely affected. So objectivity is extremely necessary. It does not mean that you have to be mechanical. It means that you are supposed to exercise your discretion. You are supposed to exercise discretion within the bounds of known principles and ideals, within the bounds of some legal framework. You are given adequate space to exercise your knowledge and wisdom. But exercise of such knowledge and wisdom should not transcend that boundary of known principles. It must be intelligible. It must be consistent. It should be clear. Fine. This is your objectivity. Objectivity, अब जैसे अब कोई पुलिस ऑफिसर है, उसके सामने कोई मैटर आ गया, दो पार्टीज हैं, दोनों के बीच डिस्प्यूट है. अब दोनों पार्टीज जो हैं दोनों अलग अलग कास्ट को बिलोंग करते हैं. तो किस कास्ट को बिलोंग करते हैं, किस कम्युनिटी को बिलोंग करते हैं, पुलिस ऑफिसर खुद जो है वो किस कम्युनिटी को बिलोंग करता है. तो पुलिस ऑफिसर जिस कम्युनिटी को बिलोंग करता है उसी कम्युनिटी को वन ऑफ द पार्टीज टू डिस्प्यूट वो भी उसको बिलोंग करते हैं या वो उसके स्टेट से है और इसलिए उसने क्या किया कि अपना डिसीजन या उसका जो एक्शन था वो इससे प्रभावित हो गया. तो वहाँ तक आप कह सकते हैं कि ऑब्जेक्टिविटी हैज़ बिन कॉम्प्रोमाइज्ड. जज के सामने कोई मैरिटल डिस्प्यूट का ऐसा केस आ गया, फैमिली मैटर आ गया हस्बैंड वाइफ के बीच में, तो जज जो है उनकी अपनी समझ क्या है स्त्रियों के बारे में, औरतों के बारे में उनके अपनी समझ सोच क्या है, उसको उन्होंने अलाउ कर दिया कि वो इंटरफियर करे उनके जजमेंट के साथ में. तो वहाँ तक ऑब्जेक्टिविटी जो है वो ख़त्म हो गई. मतलब आपकी निजी ज़िंदगी में आपका अनुभव क्या है, क्या कुछ हुआ है, उससे कोई मतलब नहीं है. आप यहाँ जज के चेयर पे आप बैठे हैं, आपके सामने कोई केस है, सामने जो एविडेंसेस हैं, जो सब्जेक्ट मैटर हैं, जो एविडेंसेस हैं, उसके मेरिट को देखते हुए उसके हिसाब से आप डिसाइड करेंगे व्हाट इज़ राइट एंड व्हाट इज़ रॉन्ग. जिस हद तक आपने कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ कर दिया कि नहीं औरतें ऐसी ही होती हैं, क्योंकि आपका अपना पर्सनल अनुभव घर में आपकी वाइफ के साथ जो है उसके आधार पर आपने केस को तय कर दिया, तो वहाँ तक आपने ऑब्जेक्टिविटी के साथ कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ कर दिया. सो वॉट एवर हैपन्स इन योर पर्सनल लाइफ, व्हाट हैज़ बीन योर एक्सपीरियंस, उन सब चीज़ों को आप दूर रखेंगे एंड यू टेक डिसीजन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ द नेचर एंड कंटेंट ऑफ द सब्जेक्ट मैटर इन फ्रंट ऑफ यू. दैट इज ऑब्जेक्टिविटी. It's the measure of degree to which your personal response, your response to any situation remains free from your personal likes, dislikes, preferences, your personal, subjective ideology or subjective notions of right and wrong. That is objectivity. It's extremely essential as a part of ethical governance. That restricts the possibility of any kind of division or any kind of discrimination between two persons or two groups and communities. Clear? Then you have rationality. Rationality, it is also a part of ethical governance, that whenever you take any action, that your action must be intelligible. आप क्या कर रहे हैं ये समझ में आना चाहिए. अभी कुछ महीने पहले एक केस हुआ था, वो केस आप लोगों ने शायद टीवी पे देखा होगा. कोई अधिकारी थे, ऑफिसर थे, उनका फ़ोन जो है वो कोई वाटर बॉडी, कोई डैम वगैरह कुछ ऐसा होगा, उसमें उनका फ़ोन गिर गया. तो अपने फ़ोन को निकालने के लिए उन्होंने पूरा सिस्टम जो है वहाँ पे असेंबल कर लिया और पूरे पानी को वो पंप से निकालेंगे, पूरे पानी को निकाल के बाहर फेंक दिया. ठीक, कितना पानी बर्बाद किया एक फ़ोन को निकालने के लिए. तो ये जो क्या है, ये एथिकल मोरल डेफिशिएंसी का मामला है. न तो इसमें बुद्धि दिमाग है, न तो कोई रेशनैलिटी समझ में आ रही है, और उन्होंने अपने इंटरेस्ट को उन्होंने ऊपर रखा लार्ज इंटरेस्ट की तुलना में. ठीक है, प्लस उन्होंने अपने पर्सनल लाइक्स, अपने पर्सनल चॉइस उसको एक्सरसाइज करने के लिए उन्होंने सिस्टम का दुरुपयोग किया. क्या कोई ऐसा लॉ है, कोई ऐसा प्रोसीजर है जो आम लोगों के लिए एप्लीकेबल, जिसमें कि ये चीज़ें हो सकती हैं? किसी आम आदमी का फ़ोन अगर गिर जाए तो क्या उससे निकालने के लिए प्रशासन पूरा पानी निकाल देगा डैम से, जहाँ भी जिस वाटर बॉडी में सारा पानी वो निकाल देगा? नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होगा. तो फिर आपके लिए क्यों होगा? क्या आपके लिए कोई ऐसा कोई स्पेशल कोई प्रावधान है? क्या नहीं है. तो आपने कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ किया. ये मोरली भी डेफिशिएंट है, एथिकली डेफिशिएंट, और साथ साथ लॉजिकली भी डेफिशिएंट है कि इस तरीके से कोई फ़ोन निकालता है. ठीक है, कितने का फ़ोन तुम्हारा नहीं है और उतने फ़ोन के लिए तुमने इतना पानी बर्बाद कर दिया, इतनी बिजली बर्बाद कर दी. नहीं, फ़ोन बहुत महंगा फ़ोन था, तो जब इतनी हैसियत नहीं है तो मत रखा करो फ़ोन. समझ गए कि महंगा फ़ोन था, ऐसा फ़ोन है कि उस फ़ोन के चक्कर में तुमने पूरा सिस्टम ही लगा दिया, उसमें इतने सारे पानी बर्बाद कर. इससे फ़ोन मत रखो, ऐसा घटिया फ़ोन रखा, तुम्हें जो लगता है वो रखा करो. समझ की बात को. ये आपकी हो गई ये रेशनैलिटी. तो रेशनैलिटी का मतलब फिर क्या? और रेशनैलिटी इज ऑल्सो पार्ट ऑफ एथिकल गवर्नेंस. टू डील विथ एनी सिचुएशन you identify different courses of action. If, in the light of some value system, to deal with certain subject matter, if you have chosen a course of action, the consequence of which can be anticipated, your decision is a rational decision. तो रैशनैलिटी केवल ऐसा मत समझो बस लॉजिक एंड रीजनिंग हो, तो लगभग हर एक्शन में अपने हिसाब से कोई लॉजिक रीजनिंग हो जाती है. रैशनैलिटी इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन गवर्नेंस has to be understood a little, in a different way. Rationality केवल इतना नहीं कि logic और reasoning, मतलब in the light of some values and principles, while dealing with a certain subject matter, or you have to take a decision regarding certain subject matter, you explore different courses of action. If out of many courses of action, you have chosen the one, the consequence of which can be anticipated. तुम्हें पता चल रहा है, तुम एंटिसिपेट कर सकते हो कि अगर हम ऐसा करेंगे तो इसका कॉन्सिक्वेंस क्या होगा, तब ये रैशनल डिसीजन। पॉइंट इज क्लियर? आप कुछ ऐसा काम कर रहे हैं, आपको भी नहीं पता कि इसका कॉन्सिक्वेंस क्या होगा, इसका मतलब है कि ये रैशनल डिसीजन और रैशनल एक्शन नहीं है। सो देयरफॉर इट इज अ पार्ट ऑफ एथिकल गवर्नेंस। व्हेनेवर द गवर्नमेंट इज डूइंग समथिंग, देयर शुड बी क्लियर कट रिलेशनशिप between the means and ends. Means and resources are limited, and needs and aspirations of society is constantly rising. So we have limited resources and we have to deal with multifarious demands of the society. So you cannot afford to misuse resources. Resources are required to be deployed very prudently. So whenever you take any decision, your decision or the course of action chosen by you must reflect, a direct link or very clear-cut, intelligible link between means and ends. That you are doing something, the consequence of which can be anticipated. That yes, I'm going to do this and this will lead to this kind of consequences. This project will be over, or this program will be completed by 2 or 3 years. Into 2 or 3 years, in 2-3 years, we will have accomplished these things. So things are clearly intelligible. To that extent, one can claim that rationality has been accomplished. Rationality has been duly adhered to. That is also a part of ethical governance. Remember one thing: when we talk about ethics in the government and governance, the ethics is a multidimensional concept. Multidimensional. Just 2 or 3 attributes are not enough. There are so many things which come within the bounds of it. In fact, efficiency in government has ethical underpinnings. Are you getting a point? Efficiency in the private sector, input and output, and efficiency is defined. This much of time, money, energy you are investing, and this is the consequence. So input and output equation is taken into consideration to decide whether you are efficient or not. एक कार है, कार की एफिशिएंसी देख लो, हमने उसमें 10 लीटर डीजल डाल दिया, पेट्रोल डाल दिया, और पर लीटर कितने किलोमीटर कार जा रही है, सिंपल ऐसे निकालोगे एफिशिएंसी। प्राइवेट सेक्टर में जो एफिशिएंसी है वो सीधे कॉज और इफेक्ट के बीच में आप देख लोगे, मीन्स एंड्स के बीच में बहुत आसानी से निकाला जा सकता है। पॉइंट द इनपुट एंड आउटपुट, दिस मच ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट वी हैव मेड, इसका कॉन्सिक्वेंस क्या है, इतना तो इंटरेस्ट से ही आ गया होता। तो वो बहुत ही क्वांटिटेटिव कॉन्सेप्ट है, ज़्यादा वो क्वांटिटेटिव है। बट इन द गवर्नमेंट, व्हेन यू थिंक अबाउट एफिशिएंसी और इकॉनमी, when you think of the efficiency has ethical and moral underpinnings. It means it is just not enough that you have accomplished something with the list of the investment of time, money, energy. It is not enough. You have to conform to ethical and moral standards as well. अगर आप थोड़े ज़्यादा पैसे खर्च हो जाए कोई बात नहीं है, लेकिन आप उस एथिकल मोरल स्टैंडर्ड्स के साथ कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं करेंगे, विच आर हेल्ड डियरली बाय द सोसाइटी विद इन द बाउंड्स ऑफ विच यू आर वर्किंग। समझ में आए? सो एथिक्स की बात जब लोग करते हैं, एफिशिएंसी की बात करते हैं इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट, इट स्टैंड्स ऑन अ डिफरेंट फुटिंग फ्रॉम द प्राइवेट सेक्टर टू सम एक्सटेंट. So you have rationality, then you have political neutrality. Political neutrality is also part of ethical governance. So it is for bureaucracy, very well the civil servants, they need to be politically neutral. Because administration is not an end in itself. Administration is an instrument in the hands of the political leadership. Because this instrument has to be used by the political leadership in furtherance of the larger interest of, or the interest of the society, social justice, economic justice, political justice, etc. So administration has to be politically neutral. It does not mean the bureaucrats and the civil servants, they may not have political preferences. They have political preferences, but insofar as discharging their official, insofar as exercising their authority and discharging responsibilities are concerned, they should not be biased, and their decision, their actions should not be governed by one other kind, conformity to one other kind of political ideology. All around people are equal for them, and in their treatment there should not be any kind of differentiation. One more thing, that bureaucracy has to be politically neutral. It means they should not conform to, they are not supposed to conform to any command or any order which is politically motivated, and which does not conform to the requirement of constitutional principles and values, which does not conform to the requirement of rule of law. If bureaucrats are being asked by any political party, any political leadership to do certain things which are not compatible with the common legal code within the bounds of which they are functioning, they can refuse to accept such order and command. So that requires a lot of courage. Unfortunately, that is not happening in India. In many cases, you find the public administration and the top leaders, your police leadership or in general, the administrative leadership, they have, many cases we have seen that they so easily they submit to the political, the whims and fancies of the leaders at the top. So it happens, but this is the extent to which it happens. It is morally and ethically deficient. This is not the part of ethical governance. Point is clear. So ethical governance means that the administration should remain politically neutral. Their actions should be within the bounds of law. Their actions should not reflect the action of their actions should not emanate from the ideological inclination towards one or other political party. Okay, it should be within the bounds of law. So political neutral. And one more thing, for the political leadership also, this is political neutrality. Political neutrality to some extent it is applicable to political leadership as well. अब आप बोलोगे पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप से पॉलिटिकल न्यूट्रलिटी का क्या मतलब है? मतलब ये है कि टू विन इलेक्शंस, जब इलेक्शन जब चल रहा है उस वक्त आप कंटेस्ट करते हैं, ठीक है, सारी एडवर्सरीज होते हैं, आप फाइट करते हैं, 50 तक की बातें करते हैं, एक दूसरे से आगे निकलने की कोशिश करते हैं, वहाँ तो ठीक है. बट वंस द गवर्नमेंट इज फॉर्म, देन द पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप शुड रिफ्लेक्ट न्यूट्रलिटी. Political leadership should reflect neutrality in the matters of delivering goods and services, to the society at large. वहाँ पर ये पार्टी, ये बीजेपी जो है, भारतीय जनता पार्टी, उसकी सरकार चल रही है या कांग्रेस पार्टी की सरकार चल रही है. बट वंस द गवर्नमेंट हैज बीन फॉर्म्ड, द गवर्नमेंट हैज टू बी free from the political preferences. It means you will provide all goods and services to the people across the board without any differentiation whether they belong to the vote bank of this political party or that party, they belong to this community or that community. Once the government is formed, then all people who fall under your jurisdiction within your operational domain, they are equal to you. So for bureaucrats, political neutrality would mean that their actions should emanate from common legal code, requirements of law, principles and values of the constitution. Their actions should not be governed by the political preferences, likes, dislikes, getting a point, and all other kind of manipulations of the leadership at the top. They should have courage and guts to say that this is not possible. If there is so much of political interference in police administration, who is responsible? Police leadership is also responsible. आईपीएस ऑफिसर सारी पढ़ाई लिखाई करके और आईपीएस ऑफिसर बन जाते हैं, और उसके बाद उनकी क्या स्थिति है? ऊपर टॉप पे जाकर के जब वही सबमिट करते हैं मिनिस्टर्स के सामने, तो उनके नीचे जो थानेदार वगैरह होंगे वो क्या सोचेंगे? ठीक है, अगर पुलिस में बहुत ज़्यादा पॉलिटिकल इंटरफेरेंस है तो उसके लिए सबसे ज़्यादा रिस्पॉन्सिबल कोई अगर है तो वो पुलिस लीडरशिप है. तो पुलिस लीडरशिप है, क्या आपस में उनकी मीटिंग नहीं होती? आपस में उनका कोई एसोसिएशन नहीं है आईपीएस ऑफिसर्स का? आपस में बातचीत क्या करते हैं? क्या आपस में उनको तय नहीं कर लेना चाहिए कि क्या करना नहीं करना है? ठीक है, तो वो अगर पुलिस लीडरशिप अगर बहुत स्ट्रांग रहेगी, उनमें अगर करेज अगर होगा, तो ये पॉसिबल नहीं है. पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप कैसे इंटरफेयर करेगी? आप यहाँ ट्रांसफ़र करेंगे, वहाँ ट्रांसफ़र करेंगे, कितने लोगों का ट्रांसफ़र करेंगे, कितनी पनिशमेंट पोस्टिंग करेंगे? जो ऑफिसर्स आ रहे हैं, दे कन्फर्म टू द प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ ऑनेस्टी, इंटीग्रिटी, एंड दे कन्फर्म टू द प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ ऑब्जेक्टिविटी, रेशनैलिटी. दे विल नॉट डेविएट एट ऑल फ्रॉम द पाथ ऑफ लॉ, रूल्स, रेगुलेशन. ठीक है, संदेश खाली में बहुत कुछ हो जाएगा. बंगाल में वायलेंस चल रहा होगा, फिर मणिपुर में होगा, कहीं बिहार में होगा, कई स्टेट में चल रहा होता है. आप आमतौर पे क्या देखते हैं? पुलिस सीधे सबमिट कर देती है, पॉलिटिकल जिसकी सरकार है उसके सामने झुक जाएगी. वो नए केस बना देगी, एग्जिस्टिंग केस को गायब कर देगी, जिसको बचाना है बचा लेगी, गायब कर देगी. इसलिए उनकी आप देख लो, उनकी क्रेडिबिलिटी क्या है, लेवल ऑफ ट्रस्ट और कॉन्फिडेंस क्या है पुलिस में लोगों का. ठीक है, क्यों? क्योंकि उन्होंने इन सब चीज़ों के साथ कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ कर रखा है. ठीक है, ऑब्जेक्टिविटी नाम की चीज़ तो दिखती नहीं है. ठीक है, कितने लोगों को भरोसा है कि वो थाने में जाएंगे तो सब चीज़ें वैसे ही होंगी जैसा लॉ के अनुसार है? कितने लोग, आम लोगों से जाके पूछे. तो दैट दे कीप ऑब्जेक्टिविटी तो बहुत बड़ी चीज़ हो गई, बहुत बड़ी चीज़ हो गई. एस्ट्रेटी, पॉलिटिकल न्यूट्रलिटी, देन डिपेंडेबिलिटी. डिपेंडेबिलिटी इज समथिंग दैट यू अर्न ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. The consistency, matlab honesty, integrity, efficiency, economy, all such things are reflected consistently over a period of time. Okay, you remain present, you have always remained present in time to deal with the situation effectively. Then you achieve that dependability. Dependability is not something that you achieve overnight. It is an evolutionary process over a period of time. The consistency in your performance, conformity to the code of morals, ethics over a period of time. You have been able to resolve the problem. You are efficient, you are very prompt, you're efficient, you are effective, and with due consistency, then you achieve dependability. Then you have efficiency, economy. I have discussed efficiency, economy, and efficacy. You are efficient. You are efficient. You are not merely concerned with the accomplishment of goals and objectives, but you accomplish goals and objectives in the best possible manner. List of the investment of time, money, and energy. At the same time, you do not compromise with ethical, moral standards. Point clear? So, efficiency and economy, you know very well that wastage of resources has to be stopped, and then available resources are to be utilized in the best possible manner. So with the same amount of input, you maximize the output, efficiency and economy. And then you have efficacy. Efficacy, that is power to produce desired results. Efficiency and efficacy, they are not the same things. It means you may be efficient and you have economized your operations, still you may not be efficacious. Power to produce desired results. So you need efficiency as well as efficacy. There is a possibility that you are efficient, but ultimately your efficiency was not accompanied by unity of direction and purpose. To that extent, despite being efficient, you may not be able to accomplish the goals and purpose for which you had started or you had begun with this, the activities and the functions. So efficacy means power to produce desired results. So efficiency is accompanied by unity of direction and the purpose, sense of commitment. In a very organized manner you are doing the things, then you produce the desired results. If that results are not produced, so even though you are efficient, you may not be called efficacious. Next is dynamism. Howsoever good you may be, you are very much efficient, you are very much effective, efficacious, honesty, integrity, everything is there. But one fundamental principle, what is that? That nothing remains static. Everything is constantly evolving. Our society is constantly evolving. So accordingly, administration is also required to be oriented accordingly. It means principle of dynamism has universal relevance. It means in keeping with the changes taking place in the environment, you need to bring desirable changes in the structural dimension of organizations, institutions. You are required to bring desirable changes in the procedures, tools, techniques, and technology, or the equation of relationship between the governance on the government on the one hand and society on the other. So, a lot many things are required to be changed. You have to keep a watch on the developments taking place around, and accordingly, you synchronize with that. Point is clear? So this is your dynamism, principle of dynamism. Howsoever good you may be, you cannot achieve perpetual relevance. Things are constantly changing. So you have to keep pace with changes taking place around. This is your society and this is your governance. If society is constantly moving like this, then governance and administration has to move along sideways. It means that synchronization. वो पढ़े ना जियो synchronous satellite. देखिए अर्थ का जो रोटेशन है वो चल रहा है ऐसे, सैटेलाइट भी ऐसे चल रहा है ऐसे. सो दैट काइंड ऑफ synchronization is required between government on the one hand, government, and then society on the other. This is also a part of ethical governance. How can governance be called ethical if the members, I would say, the political administrative leadership, they are not dynamic. They are just doing the things only for the heck of it. So in the course of time, a lot of changes have taken place in the society. Even value system has undergone changes. The notion of right and wrong, their needs, their aspirations, rising needs and aspirations, if these are not being taken care of, it means society has evolved very fast, but administration is very slow, or it remains largely static. It is not evolving by that pace. So to that extent, there will be a friction between the governance on the one hand, government on the one hand, and society on the other. This disjunction or this friction and conflict will make the things difficult for the government. Point clear? So that's why that synchronization must be achieved. A proactive government, it deals not only with the contemporary problems and challenges, it also anticipates things in future and accordingly prepare for the same. So that government generally, does not face that kind of friction and conflict with the society, because even before the society, the people in the society realize that what is required, what is desirable, even before that administration ends up providing, or sometimes administration moves one step ahead. The government governance is so proactive, and they are so much progressive that they anticipate, they create the needs and aspirations, they bring changes in the quality of life of people without waiting for any kind of protest to take place demanding new kinds of goods and services from the government. So proactive government, you can say. So you have dynamism, then you have human orientation. ठीक है, being rational. So conformity to the principle of rationality, conformity to the principles of objectivity or impersonality does not mean that the administration becomes, or bureaucrats become high and dry in general. They end up losing that human face in administration. So things are required to be balanced out nicely, which means you are using best of the tools and technologies, methods, process. You work within the bounds of law, but that touch with the society should never be lost. That organic connectedness with the society should never be lost. The administration should carry that human face, and then human orientation. Human orientation is different from human face. It means despite having your best of the tools and techniques inspired by your rules and techniques related to information technology, or you are using artificial intelligence, but you have identified, you have discovered the ways and means to keep in touch with society. So constant interaction, human to human interaction with society should never be compromised. It should take place. So regular routine activities, services, for the convenience of society can be provided through your online, the online mechanism, your through apps or through the website or portal. All such things can be provided, but it does not mean that the people of administration, should never come in contact with society. So there should be ways and means, if required. It should be made mandatory for the officials. At least you need to interact with them once in a week, or once or twice in 15 days or in a month, something depending on situation, circumstances, nature of subject matter, nature of service. Point is clear? So that human face should be there, and human orientation, that kindness, that benevolence, that sensitivity, it has to be reflected in the governance. Point clear? So if you are dealing with the people from rural areas, वहाँ से लोग आते हैं, भले आपका साथ सिस्टम ऑनलाइन है, उनकी कई तरह की दिक्कत हो सकती है, डिजिटल लिटरेसी अभी उस लेवल तक नहीं पहुँची है, तो आप लोगों के साथ आप कायदे से पेश आएंगे, अच्छे से पेश आएंगे, उनकी बातों को आप समझें. ये ऐसा है, 5 बजे तक ये होगा, कल आइए फिर जाइए, ऐसे बातचीत आप नहीं करते हैं. कोई रास्ता निकल सकता है तो निकालिए. आपको यू हैव टू कीप विद इन द बाउंड्स ऑफ लॉ. ठीक है, लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि यू हैव टू बिहेव लाइक अ रोबोट. ठीक है, यू हैव टू कीप विद इन द बाउंड्स ऑफ लॉ, बट विद इन द बाउंड्स ऑफ लॉ, इफ यू एक्सरसाइज द अथॉरिटी विथ लिटिल क्रिएटिविटी, you can bring significant changes in overall response of the administration or the government to the society. आप काफ़ी क्रिएटिवली अपने अथॉरिटी को एक्सरसाइज करके आप लोगों के जीवन को बेहतर बना सकते हैं. दिस इज पॉसिबल. ठीक है, आप किसी को साफ कर सकते हैं, 5 बज गया, 5 बजे का सर्वर डाउन हो गया, ऐसे काम नहीं हो सकता है, तो अम्मा जी आप जाइए फिर आइएगा कल. और आप ये भी कर सकते हैं कि 5 बजे अगर नहीं हो सकता है तो आपने उनकी बात को समझा और कुछ ऐसा सुनिश्चित कर दिया कि आप ऐसा कर दें कि वापस आपको आने की आवश्यकता नहीं हो, क्योंकि आपकी उम्र बहुत ज़्यादा है, आपको बहुत दिक्कत होगी आने में. कोई रास्ता, मतलब ऐसा कुछ नहीं, मतलब कोई रास्ता आप निकाल सकते हैं, लोगों के कन्वीनियंस के लिए बहुत कुछ कर सकते हैं. सो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, हाउस एवर सॉफिस्टिकेटेड इट मे बी इन टर्म्स ऑफ टूल्स, टेक्निक्स, प्रोसेस, टेक्नोलॉजी, मॉडर्निटी का मतलब ये नहीं है कि यू एंड अप लूजिंग दैट यू एंड अप लूजिंग दैट सेंसिटिविटी, that human connect. That this is extremely essential. This is a part of ethical governance. In future, this quality of the governance will be tested. आप बेस्ट ऑफ द टूल्स टेक्नोलॉजी यूज़ करेंगे, लेकिन आपको ये देखना होगा कि टेक्नोलॉजी शुड रिमेन आवर सर्वेंट. वी डू नॉट एंड अप बिकमिंग द सर्वेंट ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी, because the end of the day, governance is not only about providing goods and services to the society. It is also about making them feel that administration is a part of this extended, the larger family. ठीक है, the people in administration and the governance, they represent the people at large, elected or selected. They are your people. तो ये उस लेवल पे आपको ले जाना होगा. So ethical governance is not just about conforming to the law, rules, everything. तो है, ठीक है, but you need to go beyond that. You need to reflect that sensitivity. ये हर बात एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में लोगों को, और मिनिस्टर्स हों या फिर आपके ब्यूरोक्रेट्स हों, सिविल सर्वेंट्स हों, कोई भी हों, ये बात जो है वो हर बात सिखाई नहीं जा सकती, हर बात लॉ के अंदर लिखी नहीं जा सकती है. कुछ बातें आपको खुद भी समझनी पड़ेगी. ठीक. द डायनामिज्म एंड ह्यूमन ओरिएंटेशन, एंड देन ट्रांसपेरेंसी एंड अकाउंटेबिलिटी. द हायर द लेवल ऑफ ट्रांसपेरेंसी, transparency, the higher the level of accountability, the more will be the trust and confidence. So level of trust and confidence between government on the one hand and society on the other, it is affected to a great extent by this transparency and accountability. And you have to keep things transparent. Why? Because it is based on the basic idea that in democracy, those who are in the government, they exercise authority. They exercise authority under a law which has been given by the society at large. So it means, who is the repository of all power and authority? The people at large, that group and community, they are the public at large, they are the repository of all power and authority. You are simply exercising such authority in trust and on behalf of the society. Whether you are elected or you are selected, you are a minister or you are a bureaucrat, you are exercising authority under a law which has been given to the entire system by the people themselves. The word "we" in the constitution holds a lot of significance. So therefore, all public servants, they should never forget that they are not the owner of resources, they are not the masters, they are servants. Simply by saying that we are public servants is not enough. It should be reflected in your action. By that measure, you have to maintain highest level of transparency. People have every right to know that what are you doing, what you are doing with your authority, your power, and what you are doing with the resources which have been placed at your disposal. Because such resources belong to the people of this country. So transparency has this basic principle behind it. So if you are transparent, you are not extending any kind of favor. You have to be transparent because you are a servant. You are not the master, and master has every right to know what is happening, with his resources. So people at large, they are the repository of all power and authority. They have shared their power and authority to some extent. They have shared a part of their power and authority to create this government. So therefore, the government has to be accountable to the master, to the society at large, and they have to maintain highest level of transparency. One clear? That leads to, the trust and confidence between the government and the society. One clear? So these are some important aspects of ethical governance. Okay, so you have efficiency, you have economy, you have efficacy, and two more points which can be added is the equality and expertise. These two can be added. 5 E's you can say: the efficiency, economy, efficacy, equality, and expertise. These two can be added. Okay, so you have, and then the equality. This is also a part of ethical governance, important part of ethical governance. That treatment, water treatment, which is being given, treatment which is given by you to the people, there should not be any kind of discrimination. People are to be treated equally. So you have Article 14 in our Constitution. Article 14 deals with equality. Deals with equality. So Article 14 talks about equality before law and equal protection of all laws. So equality. This is also one of the important aspect of an important ingredient or constituents of ethical governance. The principle of equality should be followed. Two persons in the same condition, they should be treated alike. And if there is any kind of departure from the equality, there should be genuine justification for the same. And that if there is a departure from the equality, it has to be reasonable, it has to be consistent, it has to be intelligible, and this can be tested in the extreme situation. If something has gone wrong, so it can be tested by the court of law, by the judiciary. So the principle of equality has to be followed. Two persons living in the same situation, they cannot be treated differently. And then expertise. It is expected of the government and the functionaries in the government to keep working for improvement and to achieve excellence. So how can you provide best of goods and services to society if you do not develop that expertise? From time to time, as and when it is found that your goods and services are deficient in terms of quality or something else, then you need to improve upon that. So expertise is required. The higher the level of better training, better expertise, and the better is the quality of goods and services. So it is just not enough that you keep working and keep providing same set of goods and services. You should constantly strive for excellence, and you should make effort to achieve expertise. The higher the level of expertise, the better will be the utilization of available resources and better will be the quality of goods and services. So this is your ethical governance. Point is clear? So you have government, then you have governance. Governance is the sum total of different kinds of activities. Governance is the process. Governance is the process by which authority is exercised to provide different kinds of goods and services to society. Okay? And is governance, what is the impact of governance? What is the impact of governance? What is the nature and quality of governance? Accordingly, the word governance can be qualified by the word like ethical governance or digital governance or e-governance. अब इसके ऊपर आप सारे कॉन्सेप्ट अप्लाई कर सकते हो. गवर्नेंस तो अपनी जगह पे है, आपने इसमें इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी को बहुत अच्छी तरह से यूज़ कर लिया तो वो ई गवर्नेंस हो गया. ठीक है, यू हैव मेड यूज़ ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी, ठीक है, टू मेक योर डिसीजंस बेटर or to ensure better implementation of your decision, to enforce accountability, to facilitate public participation in decision making process, to provide online different kinds of goods and services with the speed and economy. So making use of information technology to provide best of the services to the society, whether in terms of development or security, deliverance of goods and services, all put together, e-governance. And if the governance is accompanied by, if the governance is something which is not merely concerned with providing goods and services, in the course of providing goods and services, governance is accompanied by conformity to these ethical standards, then it becomes ethical governance. So those who are involved in providing such services, they conform to these ethical standards, ethical governance. And if they are providing such goods and services, governance as a collective enterprise action, governance, the nature of governance is such that it involves people in the decision-making process. Then there is an element of public accountability. The wall of separation is not there between government and society. It does not mean that confusion हो गया, ऐसा कहने का मतलब नहीं. कहने का मतलब there is not a rigid wall of separation. It means there is a lot of interaction between government and society. Popular participation, people participate in the decision making process as far as possible, and then the system also holds itself accountable to the society. So you can say the governance in the real sense is democratic governance, because the government actions at the top, to a great extent it is motivated by the needs and aspirations and the collective preference of the society. So as a democratic governance, the model of governance when people, aam aadmi, they are made to feel important. They are made to feel that the government is not an isolated entity. Government is something which they have constituted. It represents the authority which you have shared with the government, and the government's actions are inspired by your needs, aspirations and expectation. A kind of cyclical process. So you need to understand governance, and then you need to apply the first word, that and it conforms to ethical standards. This is known as ethical governance. So there can be a question like, there is nothing like ethical governance. What is devoid of ethics is not governance at all. Okay? You elevate the things. This is not wrong. There is nothing like ethical. Why to use the word ethical? Governance means governance. It means you are taking things to a higher moral pedestal. Definition of governance. Normally, when we talk about governance, it is about the exercise of authority, the process by which authority is exercised and goals are accomplished. We influence the society. But if you elevate that ethical moral standard, then you will say at the first instance that government is not government, which is not ethically sound. Are you getting a point? So governance, there is nothing like ethical governance. So it means ethical or moral standards should necessarily be included in the process of governance. So it is not something to be taken on a very you can say that you are very good, your governance is ethical governance. Anyway, you have to do that. Ethical attributes should be there in the governance. Ethical requirements should be there in the governance. Governance will not be a governance if it is not accompanied by ethical standards. So that is the point. There is nothing like ethical governance. What is devoid of ethics is not governance at all. So this is the definition of governance, which is more elevated. Deficiency, जैसे तो आप कह सकते हो, education is not education if it is devoid of ethics. So howsoever sound you may be, you have got 99% marks, 99.9% marks. So you have studied so many things in best of the institution in the world, Harvard, Cambridge, everything you have done. But if you are ethically, morally deficient, so you cannot qualify to be called educated. It all depends on what kind of society we are living in. If society has the society which has a very high ethical or moral standards, in that society we will come across this kind of things. That education, you will not be treated as an educated person if you are devoid of ethical and moral standards, simply on the basis of the stock of knowledge that you have acquired, or power, or a power of analysis or intellectual resplendence that you have achieved. For that, simply on the basis of that, you cannot be called educated. Same is the case with the governance. That simply because you are providing goods and services to the society, so it will not qualify for the governance. Governance to begin with good is a distinct thing. Governance, at the first instance, governance has to begin with conformity to ethical moral standards, because a governance which is devoid of ethical moral standards can never develop relationship with the society. Point is clear? Therefore, in the governance, you have to reflect concern for ethical moral standards of society, which are held dearly by society. Otherwise, this government will become a remote government. A government that government will not be a government of the society. Something else. Then this is the point: ethical governance in India. So, if you see the state of affairs in India, so what can we do? There's no denying the fact that administration or governance in India is not so well placed, as far as ethical conformity to ethical or moral standards are concerned. So what can we do to bring ethical governance in India? I don't mean to say this is not ethical, but there's a long way to go. Moral ethical deficiency is seen. Corruption is there in the different departments, in different levels in the government. Corruption is there. We need to accept that. So what can we do to bring ethical governance in India? So for that, you have some long-term measures you can take, some short-term measures. So long-term and short-term measures can be taken. मतलब दोनों चीज़. There are some people, they deserve to be brought under control through stringent laws, through tough administrative actions, because they are incorrigible. Okay, so you cannot afford to wait for another 10 or 20 years for education, awareness, let the people feel and realize the significance of ethical governance. So first thing that you need to understand, ethical governance is not possible. Ethical governance is not sustainable if your society is ethically and morally deficient. जब सरोवर का पानी ही गंदा है तो लोटा कितना भी चमचमाता लेकर के आओ, लेकिन पानी उसके अंदर गंदा ही आएगा. पॉइंट क्लियर? इसका मतलब ये कि ethical governance cannot be developed, cannot be sustained for long if your society is ethically not so sound or morally not so sound. So you have to work for the government and administration, and then you have to work for ethical and moral elevation of the society as well. So you have you'll have to go for some long-term measures and short-term measures. So long-term measures, persuasion, better education, then awareness, making people aware of their rights and their duties. Okay, so and the better training of the bureaucrats. Gradually, you are diluting, the evils of the bureaucracy. Okay, the democratization of society, democratization of administration. These are long evolutionary process. And on the other hand, you can take some short-term but very effective measures to begin with. That you need, you can come up with the more stringent laws, but the cost of resorting to moral or ethical deficiencies should be high. Then we should have, we need to establish, or for that matter, if required, then existing institutions can be given more power. Institutions to exercise, new set of institutions, more powerful institutions to exercise, vigilance constantly to catch hold of the cases of corruption or moral ethical deficiency. Very fast adjudication of such disputes and some cases of moral turpitude, it should be taken care of. So you need better law, the legal system. The law should have deterrence, and we need to ensure that there is certainty of punishment. The real deterrence comes not so much from the law, stringent laws. The real deterrence comes from the certainty of the punishment that you ensure under the law. So if required, rules and procedures should be brought on scientific lines, should be simplified so as to ensure that those who resort to corruption, those who resort to ethical or moral deficiency, being in the position of authority, they should be caught hold of very fast, and they should be punished with due efficiency. And then a conviction rate will have to be improved. Only real deterrence will be created. So on the one hand, ethical governance can be brought by force, by coercion, by creating deterrence. So better laws, better institutions, better vigilance, then very creative use of informational technology, for the enforcement of accountability. So as the government is doing, gradually we are moving towards fact-based administration. Gradually we are moving towards more and the scope of e-governance is being expanded by the government. That has also played an important role and will have an important role to play in future to restrict the possibilities of corruption. But on the other hand, what I mean to say that you need to go for the long-term persuasive means, measures and approach, because in long term ethical governance will not be genuinely ethical governance if people are ethically and morally sound, or they appear, or they are ethically and morally they are sound, not so much because of their natural disposition, behavioral disposition, but more because of deterrence of law. So that ethical governance will not be sustainable. So if any government comes in the future and that government is not so much sound in terms of that government, the political leadership is morally deficient. So in that case, once again, you will see that deficiency in the administration as well. So what I mean to say, that we need long-term measures and short-term measures. In the short term, you focus more on institutions. Institutions can be established. You have CBI, you have ED, your Lokpal and Lok Ayuktas, and the banking ombudsman in different areas. If required, new institutions can be established. Existing institutions can be calibrated with more power, more authority. They can be given better technology, etc. So legal system or the institutions, better use of technology. Okay, so all such things can be done to create the required deterrence. And on the other hand, we can focus more on education, more on awareness, and one other measures can be taken by the government so as to develop that integrative value system. Okay, the concept of integral existence, integrative value system, that all of us in togetherness constitute a family, in the sense of belongingness to a common culture, common tradition, common family, the sense of nationalism. All such things can be encouraged by the government. You resort to corruption, you resort to misprisioneric activities because you don't love your country, you don't love your society. So the root cause of corruption lies here. If you really love your country, your society, and you have a sense of belongingness, to this country, and the entire country is a family, something, then you will not resort to corruption. You consider people as a part of a family. आप अपने घर में, कितने लोग घर में चोरी करते हैं? नहीं करते. बदमाश भी होते हैं, बाहर करते हैं, अपने घर में नहीं करते, क्योंकि अपने घर से प्यार करते हैं, लोगों से प्यार करते हैं. अगर घर के परिवार के लोगों से बहुत प्यार करते हैं तो थोड़ा सा एक्सटेंडेड होना चाहिए. केवल परिवार नहीं, देश समाज सब कुछ है. ठीक है, इसलिए केवल ये मामला केवल स्ट्रिंजेंट लॉ का और एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन का नहीं, हमें एजुकेशन और ग्रेटर अवेयरनेस इन सब पे काफ़ी फोकस करना पड़ेगा. एक लॉन्ग टर्म में एक इंटीग्रेटिव वैल्यू सिस्टम, उसको इनकरेज करना पड़ेगा, प्रमोट करना पड़ेगा, तब जाकर के लॉन्ग टर्म एंड शॉर्ट टर्म मेजर्स. बट द अल्टीमेट आउटकम दैट फाइनली वुड लाइक टू इंश्योर दैट इफ एथिकल गवर्नेंस इन इंडिया इज देयर, एथिकल गवर्नेंस इज नॉट सो मच बिकॉज ऑफ deterrence of law. Ethical governance is more because of gradual evolution of the society and administration on positive lines. There has been some elevation of moral and ethical standards of society. So it is not something which is people talk so much about. This is quite natural. You have to be like this. How can you exercise authority, in this way and manner? How can you discriminate between two individuals, groups and communities? They belong to this. They belong to this. They are related. They are doing something, or they have done something under a law, and they have to be treated within the bounds of law, without any differentiation, without any discrimination. Simple point. People in the similar situation are to be treated alike. They are not to be discriminated. Ethical moral deficiency should be arrested, not only by law, deterrence of law and institution, but also because of gradual evolution of society on positive and progressive lines. So people develop in general a natural disposition not to do something wrong. Point clear? लोग ट्रैफिक सिग्नल पे, वहाँ पे ट्रैफिक में आप देखोगे लोग जो है रेड सिग्नल जैसे होता है वहाँ रुक जाते हैं इसलिए नहीं क्योंकि पुलिस फाइन कर सकती है, पुलिस आपको पनिश कर सकती है, इसलिए कि लोग डिसिप्लिन हो गए. अब वहाँ पुलिस है या नहीं है, लेकिन वो लोग वहाँ पे रुक जाते हैं. नेचुरल डिस्पोजिशन ऐसा होगा. डिसिप्लिन का भी हमारा देश ही हमारा एक सिस्टम है. हमें इतना काम तो हम लोग कर ही सकते हैं. गवर्नेंस इज नॉट समथिंग विच इज एसोसिएटेड विद गवर्नमेंट अलोन. Governance in the larger context is a collective enterprise which involves people as well as institutions of the government. स्वच्छ भारत अभियान कब तक चलाएंगे मोदी जी? आप खुद कॉपरेट करेंगे नहीं, यहाँ वहाँ खाते पीते सब फेंकते रहेंगे तो क्या होगा? अगर आप गलत नहीं करते हैं और आप दूसरों को भी रोकते हैं, तो आप भी गवर्नेंस का एक हिस्सा हैं और बहुत बेहतरीन काम कर रहे हैं, ठीक है. सो एथिकल गवर्नेंस हैज़ टू बी अचीव्ड, ठीक है. टू बिगिन विथ यू नीड कोर्सिव एज वेल एज परसुएसिव मेजर्स. शुरुआत में दोनों चाहिए, बट ग्रेजुअली इन द कोर्स ऑफ टाइम आइडियल सिचुएशन विल बी दिस, दैट दिस कोर्सिव मेजर्स दिस विल बी डाइल्यूटेड. It means the situation will have arisen that will lead to dilution of these measures. तो धीरे धीरे कर अब सोसाइटी जो है वो ज़्यादा एथिकल गवर्नेंस इसलिए है क्योंकि सोसाइटी भी मोरली साउंड है, और सोसाइटी अगर मोरली साउंड है तो उसी सोसाइटी से लोग निकल के आकर के एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में का हिस्सा बनते हैं. सो रिमेंबर वन थिंग दैट यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट गवर्नमेंट एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ऑन द वन हैंड, सोसाइटी, दे आर इन ए काइंड ऑफ म्यूचुअली इन्फ्लुएंसिंग रिलेशनशिप, ठीक है. लोग कह सकते हैं कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन कैन नेवर बी मोरली एथिकली साउंड इफ सोसाइटी इज नॉट सो साउंड. सोसाइटी ही एथिकली मोरली साउंड अगर नहीं है तो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन साउंड कैसे होगा, समझ गए. और ये वैसे वर्षा म्यूचुअल इन्फ्लुएंसिंग रिलेशनशिप है. फिर एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ही खुद डेफिशिएंट अगर है तो फिर सोसाइटी में भी वो और एनकरेज ही करेगा करप्शन को, ठीक है. फिर भी दोनों में ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट ये है कि एक्चुअली दोनों साइमल्टेनियसली होना चाहिए. सो वी हैव टू ब्रिंग some kind of reforms and changes. We need to focus on ethical moral standards within the administration. Administrative ethics should be emphasized, okay? And then at the same time we should take appropriate measures for the gradual elevation of ethical and moral standards of society on progressive lines. So you need simultaneous action. जनता ये बोलेगी पुलिस पहले सुधर जाए तो हम उसका सम्मान करेंगे, पुलिस ये बोलेगी जनता पहले सुधर जाए तो फिर हम उनका सम्मान करेंगे. नहीं, आप दोनों ही साथ साथ सुधर. जहाँ आपसे गलती हो रही है आप भी सुधारें अपने आप को, और आपसे भी कुछ गलती हो रही है आप भी सुधारें, ठीक है. ये पूरा एक साइक्लिकल प्रोसेस है. सो इट्स एथिकल गवर्नेंस. व्हाट इज क्लियर? एथिकल गवर्नेंस शब्द को यहाँ पे आप देखिए एकदम सिंपल है. शॉर्ट टर्म मेजर्स और लॉन्ग टर्म मेजर्स, एथिकल गवर्नेंस. शॉर्ट टर्म मेजर्स एंड लॉन्ग टर्म मेजर्स. शॉर्ट टर्म मेजर्स में क्या है? स्ट्रिंजेंट लॉस, एफिशिएंट इंस्टीट्यूशनल अरेंजमेंट. आपके पास सीबीआई है, आपके पास ईडी है, लोकपाल, लोक आयुक्ता और भी इंस्टीट्यूशंस अगर चाहें तो आप ऐसे इंस्टीट्यूशंस बनाएं जो काफ़ी इफेक्टिवली काम करें. एनफोर्समेंट ऑफ अकाउंटेबिलिटी by creative use of information technology. IT, to a great extent, creative use of information technology can restrict the possibilities for corruption, or it has done so. Then limited discretionary power at various positions in the political administrative leadership. We need to examine it, we need to go for the audit, and where required, the power authority, there should not be too much of concentration of power authority at any one place, because that generally leads to corruption. One clear, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. पुरानी कहावत है, ठीक है. And then authority, responsibility, it has to be managed well. There is a principle of correspondence of authority and responsibility. Administration में लोग डिस्कस करते हैं that authority in excess of responsibility is dangerous, and responsibility in excess of authority is meaningless. So therefore, these things are to be taken care of. There should be limited discretionary power. Too much of discretionary power is given at any position, then that discretionary power, if it is unlimited, then it will not qualify for discretionary power. It will become, arbitrary power. So at various places there should be limited discretionary power, and various positions should be connected to one another in such a way that you don't have only superimposed control mechanism. There's a control mechanism is at the top. There should be more than one points of control. If you escape the clutches of law here, you will be caught hold of there. So overall control mechanism has to be designed in the administration, in the governance in such a way that there are various points of control connected to one another. Already system to a great extent conforms to that, but because of lack of willingness, sometimes if the intent is wrong, then best of the system will fail. They will, when the bureaucrats and the officials, they devise various ways and means, for some kind of symbiotic alliance with the political leadership and the corporate world. So they are actually designing laws, rules and regulations, so they know where to escape from. So that is dangerous. So the problem lies with the willingness and intention. But there is a possibility that system can be designed so much scientifically that to a great extent there will be little room for the expression of your bad or wrong intent. मतलब सिस्टम ऐसा डिजाइन होना चाहिए कि वो चैलेंज कर सके कि आप करप्ट है ना, करप्शन करके दिखाइए आप, ठीक है, आप कोई मिस एप्रोप्रिएशन करके दिखाइए, ठीक है. सिस्टम, ए गुड सिस्टम इज़ द वन विच हैज़ बीन डिजाइन लाइक दिस. वो किसी की मर्जी पे नहीं है, क्योंकि उस पर्सन का इंटेंट अगर अच्छा है, लोग अच्छे हैं, ईमानदार हैं, नहीं हमें आप ईमानदार हैं, नहीं हम गुंजाइश ही नहीं छोड़ेंगे काफ़ी हद तक कि आप इसमें बेईमानी कर सकें, ठीक है. सो दिस देन Administrative institutions insulated against political interference. So this is something which is extremely important and necessary. Administrative institutions should be protected, should be insulated against political interference. There can be cooperation between, or there should be cooperation between political leadership and administrative leadership, but undesirable intervention or interference should not be accepted. और एक बेस्ट एग्जांपल आप देख लो, पुलिस लीडरशिप ऑल ओवर द कंट्री. कौन सा स्टेट ऐसा है जहाँ पे आप पुलिस लीडरशिप और पुलिस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में पॉलिटिकल इंटरफेरेंस नहीं है? और हम सब लोग देख चुके हैं कि इसका खामियाजा क्या होता है. कोई घटना घट जाती है और पता चला कि अगर वो जो कल्प्रिट जो है, वो एक्यूज्ड है, वो रूलिंग पार्टी को बिलोंग करता है, तो पुलिस काफ़ी खातिर करती है. आप शाहजहां शेख वाला मामला देख लीजिए, बंगाल में क्या हुआ. ठीक है, हीरो बन के घूम रहे थे जब तक पुलिस साथ में चल रही थी, और जैसे ही ईडी सीबीआई सब की टीम आ गई तो फिर देखिए क्या दुर्गति हुई. अभी जहाँ जहाँ होना चाहिए वहीं पे हैं. ठीक है, ऐसे बहुत सारे केसेस हैं, किसी एक स्टेट की बात नहीं है, बाकी स्टेट में भी हर जगह पे ऐसा है काफ़ी. पुलिस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन जो है उसमें इंटरफेरेंस है, तो पुलिस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की बात हमने की. इन जनरल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में डिफरेंट लेवल से पॉलिटिकल इंटरफेरेंस बहुत ज़्यादा है. तो एथिकल गवर्नेंस के लिए बहुत ही ज़रूरी है कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव इंस्टीट्यूशंस को इंसुलेट किया जाए. एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव लीडरशिप में ऐसे लोगों पर होने चाहिए जिनमें भी वो करेज होना चाहिए कि वो स्टैंड कर, वो एक स्टैंड ले सकें और पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप को वो रोक सकें कि नहीं, वी विल नॉट एग्जीक्यूट द थिंग्स विच आर नॉट कॉम्पैटिबल विद द कॉमन लीगल कोड. ऐसा नहीं है कि ऐसे ऑफिसर्स नहीं हैं, लेकिन उनकी संख्या कम है. उसके बाद है तुम्हारी आपके ये वैल्यू सेंट्रिक ट्रेनिंग शुड नॉट बी ओरिएंटेड टुवर्ड्स रूल्स, रेगुलेशन एंड प्रोसीजर. अभी क्या होता है एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में, ट्रेनिंग में रूल्स को कहाँ अप्लाई करना है, प्रोसीजर कौन सा फॉलो करना है, द फोकस उस पर ज़्यादा है. लेकिन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में देयर शुड बी वैल्यू सेंट्रिक ट्रेनिंग. ये होनी चाहिए. उनको ह्यूमन राइट्स के बारे में बताना चाहिए, लोगों के फंडामेंटल राइट्स के बारे में केवल नॉलेज पढ़ के एग्जाम में पास करके आ गए वो इनफ नहीं है. मतलब टू हैव नॉलेज ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स और फंडामेंटल राइट्स, लीगल राइट्स, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट्स इज वन थिंग, एंड बीइंग राइट कॉन्शियस and to be duty conscious, ठीक है, and to respect the rights of others is a different thing. It is a very deep behavioral phenomena. आप अथॉरिटी एक्सरसाइज करते वक्त दूसरों के राइट्स का काफ़ी ध्यान रखते हैं. ठीक है, ये सब चीज़ें ट्रेनिंग में आनी चाहिए. ट्रेनिंग बहुत ज़्यादा प्रोसीजर नहीं होना चाहिए, उसको डायल्यूट करके ज़्यादा आप वैल्यू सेंट्रिक ट्रेनिंग कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, वैल्यू सेंट्रिक ट्रेनिंग, देन सिंपल and scientifically drawn rules and procedures. The simpler the rules and regulation, the lesser will be the possibility of corruption. So rules and procedures should be scientifically designed, it should be people friendly, at the same time it should restrict the possibilities of corruption. Okay? And then you have effective judicial intervention. From time to time, effective judicial intervention is required. A single word by the Supreme Court, a single sentence, it works a lot. ठीक है, इतना कुछ जैसे मणिपुर में हुआ, जैसे बंगाल में हो रहा है. बंगाल में वायलेंस, अगर सुप्रीम कोर्ट एक बार कह देती है, अगर एक बार पुलिस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को अगर वो डीजी को बुला ले, अगर समन कर ले डीजी और चीफ सेक्रेटरी को कि आप कैसे सिस्टम चला रहे हैं, ये कौन सा पुलिस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है, कौन सा पुलिस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है जहाँ पर एक इलेक्शन बिना वायलेंस के आपके नहीं हो सकता है, कोई भी एक रिलीजियस प्रोसेसन जो है वो निकल नहीं सकता बिना वायलेंस के. गवर्नर कितनी बार ऐसा कह चुके, गवर्नर कितनी बार एडवर्स कमेंट कर चुके हैं. मतलब ये आप लोग क्यों हैं ऊपर, मतलब आप डीजी किस बात के हैं, आप कैसे एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को रन कर रहे हैं. ठीक है, ऐसे ऐसे अपराधी हैं जो 10-10 साल से महिलाओं का शोषण कर रहे हैं, 10-10 साल से वो अपराध करते आ रहे हैं. ऐसा लगता है कि उन्होंने इसको पूरा इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज कर दिया है. मतलब करप्शन इज मोर इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज देन रूल ऑफ लॉ. ठीक है, तो आप लोग कर क्या रहे हैं, it's important. So judicial intervention too is required from time to time. That will exercise an effective check on corruption, and that will force them to become ethically and morally sound. तो ऐसे दोनों में बात जमती नहीं है कि आप बाई फोर्स किसी को एथिकली और मॉरली साउंड बना रहे हैं, ये बात दोनों को जमती नहीं है. ये अंदर की चीज़ है, इनर वॉइस, आप उसकी बात आप सुनते हैं अपने मन की बात. लेकिन टू बिगिन विथ you are required to exert some pressure and force, and gradually in the course of time they will start behaving. आपके अंदर अब हर एक व्यक्ति को अंदर से बहुत अच्छा बनाना उतना संभव है नहीं, लेकिन इतना भी अगर कर लें कि बिकॉज ऑफ डिटरेंस ऑफ लॉ और द इंस्टीट्यूशन, द लिटिल बिट ऑफ एजुकेशन, अवेयरनेस, ओरिएंटेशन प्रोग्राम्स, बेटर ट्रेनिंग, कम से कम इतना कर ले कि दे थिंक ट्वाइस बिफोर रिसोर्टिंग टू एनी काइंड ऑफ morally and ethically deficient act, then that will be enough for the society. हर एक व्यक्ति को आप बिल्कुल इस लेवल तक नहीं ले आ सकते, लेकिन बहुत लोगों को आप रोक सकते हैं करप्शन करने से, क्योंकि डिटरेंस ऑफ लॉ और एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की वजह से। और कुछ लोग जिनमें ये संभावना है सुधरने की, तो उनको आप फिर बेटर ट्रेनिंग का असर पड़ेगा उनके ऊपर, और वो एक बेहतर इंसान वो बनेंगे। अल्टीमेटली सोसाइटी जो है उसको आप इस ढंग से बचा सकते हैं, इस करप्शन से सोसाइटी को बचा सकते हैं, आर्बिट्रेरी एक्सरसाइज ऑफ पावर, अथॉरिटी और इन सब चीज़ों से। ठीक, सो दीज आर योर शॉर्ट टर्म मेजर्स। ठीक है, ये लॉन्ग टर्म में ये बड़ी बात है, एवोल्यूशनरी प्रोसेस है, एजुकेशन, अवेयरनेस, देन प्रमोशन ऑफ इंटीग्रेटिव वैल्यू सिस्टम, पब्लिक पार्टिसिपेशन इन डिसीजन मेकिंग प्रोसेस, डेमोक्रेटाइजेशन ऑफ एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, democratization of administration. So interface administration and society, that interface has to be the possibilities are to be improved, because there's a greater interaction between administration and society. So people should be made to feel that administration is an integral part of society. It is not a distinct and isolated entity. Clear? फिर उसके बाद democratization of administration, debureaucratization. Debureaucratization does not mean doing away with bureaucracy. It means doing away with the evils of bureaucracy gradually over a period of time. ठीक है, so you are doing away with the complex set of rules and procedures. It means rule orientation should be there, formalism should be there, but as far as possible the interaction between the two, bureaucracy on the one hand and society on the other, that interaction should be possibilities for interaction should be improved. Doing away with the evils of bureaucracy, that organic connectedness with the society should be ensured. So these are some you have long-term measures and short-term measures. Long-term measures, obviously, they are evolutionary process. All of a sudden, you cannot democratize your bureaucracy, or you cannot do away with the evils of bureaucracy. But gradually, in the course of time, through better training, and so through from time to time through orientation programs, okay, and then more interaction with society, and then with the deterrence of law. ठीक है, and effective and establishing very powerful and effective institutions to check corruption and other kind of moral ethical deficiency. In this way, overall, through these long term and short term measures, we can push governance towards ethical governance. It will not happen overnight, but we can begin with the process. And why to say begin with the process? We have already begun with that, and our central government is doing so well. Some of the state governments are doing, and gradually we are moving in that direction. But there is a long way to go. At some places things have improved, no doubt, but at many places there is a long way to go this path. Okay, so that ethical governance should not be deterrence of some political leader, that Mr. Modi ji at the top, that's why they conform to law, rules and regulation. Mr. Yogi ji is there, that's why they were doing so. No, you have to go beyond that, so that it does not depend on the nature of political leadership. It becomes a part of natural disposition of the individuals and the institutions to act honestly, to act with due honesty and integrity, with efficiency and economy. This should become a part of the culture, should become a part of work culture. It should not become a matter of so much of debate and discussion. But obvious, I have appointed to this position and I have to discharge the responsibility for which I am being paid. So what? इसमें ज़्यादा कुछ बात करने की, उस लेवल पे आपको ले जाना है. ठीक है, दिस इज एथिकल गवर्नेंस. सो एथिकल गवर्नेंस एंड एथिकल स्टैंडर्ड्स ऑफ सोसाइटी, दोनों के बीच में एक लिंक है. Ethical governance and ethical standards of the society in question. So when we talk about ethical governance, we should not remain confined to ethical or moral standards that we see in the government and administration. We should also focus on society, because administration does not come from heaven. The government does not come from heaven. It comes from the same society. So if society is undergoing some kind of moving towards, or you can say positive entropy, is undergoing some kind of moral or ethical decadence in day-to-day life, then we need to arrest that. इसलिए समाज में क्या कुछ घटना घट रही है, कई तरह के डेवलपमेंट्स लगातार होते रहते हैं, तो इन सब पे नज़र रखनी चाहिए कि हमारा एजुकेशन सिस्टम कैसा काम कर रहा है, बच्चों की प्रवृत्ति किस ढंग की है. ठीक है, आप हेल्थ, एजुकेशन, इन सब पे ध्यान देना है, वैल्यू सिस्टम, इन सब पे ध्यान देना है. कई सारी घटनाएं घट रहती हैं जिससे हम लोग काफ़ी तक पता कर लेते हैं कि किस डायरेक्शन में सोसाइटी जा रही है. तो समय रहते ही गवर्नमेंट को इनिशिएटिव लेनी पड़ती है. बहुत साइलेंटली धीरे धीरे एजुकेशन सिस्टम में बदलाव आ गया, आपका हेल्थ सिस्टम उसके अंदर बदलाव आ गया, सोशल सिक्योरिटी वगैरह पे सरकार क्या कर रही है, नहीं कर रही है. बहुत सारी की चीज़ें ऐसी हैं, अच्छी इनिशिएटिव ले सकते हैं एथिकल मोरल स्टैंडर्ड्स को एलिवेट करने के लिए। स्कूल्स हैं, कॉलेजेस हैं, उन सब में सिस्टम किस ढंग से काम कर रहा है, ये सब चीज़ होनी चाहिए। जब टीचर्स ही खुद मोरली डेफिशिएंट होंगे, एथिकली डेफिशिएंट होंगे, तो बच्चों को क्या सिखाएंगे? और बच्चे जब नहीं सीखेंगे तो वो बाहर जाके क्या सिखाएंगे? स्कूल्स के अंदर पता चलता है ऐसे ऐसे आप बच्चों से अगर आज बात करेंगे, स्कूल्स के बच्चे बहुत ज़्यादा देखते हैं, पॉजिटिव अप्रोच उनका नहीं रहता है स्कूल के प्रति। मतलब 5th-6th स्टैंडर्ड्स के बच्चे जो हैं वो स्कूल पे एजुकेशन रिफॉर्म्स के बारे में 5 बातें हम लोग सुनते हैं, बता सकते हैं। 5th-6th स्टैंडर्ड के बच्चे बोल देते हैं, हर समय पैसे मांगते रहते हैं कई बोले आप ये किताब यहीं से खरीद लो। ये बच्चे सारी चीज़ें देख रहे हैं कि हमारे पापा को बहुत परेशान कर रहे हैं कि टाई 2 महीने हुई नहीं कि टाई दूसरी टाई खरीदो आप जल्दी से 800 रुपये की, नहीं तो आपको बच्चों को आने नहीं देंगे। ठीक है, तो सारे बुक खरीदने हैं, ड्रेस आप बैग, सब जो भी कुछ है यही से लेना है, और हर दिन 50 रुपये, 100 रुपये, 100, ये सब चीज़ें हो रही। तो आप इस के क्या आप एथिकल मोरल स्टैंडर्ड्स के क्या करेंगे? बच्चे खुद ही कह रहे हैं कि हमारे स्कूल जो है वो तो पैसे लूट रहा है और हमारे पापा को ही परेशान करता रहता है हर समय। आप समझ सकते हैं। तो ये कोई एक ऐसी चीज़ नहीं है कि ओवरनाइट गवर्नमेंट कुछ लॉज लेकर के आ जाएगी और कुछ इंस्टीट्यूशंस आ जाएंगे और सारी, ये एक एवोल्यूशनरी प्रोसेस है। ये सब भी जो बातें हम लोग कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे कि शॉर्ट टर्म मेजर्स, लॉन्ग टर्म मेजर्स, ठीक है, इन सब में टाइम लगेगा। रिलेटिव टर्म्स में हम लोग शॉर्ट टर्म और लॉन्ग टर्म की बात कर रहे हैं, बट इट विल टेक टाइम। ग्रेजुअली इन द कोर्स ऑफ टाइम यू नीड सम डेटरेंस, एट द सेम टाइम you need to create conducive environment, for learning, for education, awareness, so that people develop over a period of time a general, a natural disposition against corruption and gradual orientation. Quite simple, simply they are oriented towards ethical and moral standards. उस पर इतनी चर्चा करने की आवश्यकता नहीं। ये मेरा कर्तव्य है कि मैं माता पिता के लिए करूँगा, ये बहुत अच्छी स्थिति नहीं है। अच्छी स्थिति वो है कि आप ऑब्वियसली कुछ चर्चा की बात ही नहीं है। मैं, आई और कर्तव्य, ये सब भारी भारी वर्ड उसके होती है, तो सिंपल सी बात, नेचुरल, अपने माता पिता का ख्याल रखेंगे, तो इसमें कौन सी बात होगी कि आप मोरली बहुत हाई हो गए, ऐसा कुछ नहीं। ये तो करना ही है, वहाँ सोसाइटी को दे लेकर के आपको जाना है, जहाँ पे एथिकल मोरल स्टैंडर्ड्स क्वाइट नेचुरली आ जाए। ये काफ़ी बातें कर करके अगर आ रही है तो इसका मतलब ये कि अभी हम लोग काफ़ी दूर हैं इससे, इसलिए बहुत चर्चा का विषय। तो बहुत लंबी जर्नी है, लेकिन आप बिगिन करेंगे ग्रेजुअली, एक एवोल्यूशनरी प्रोसेस है, धीरे धीरे वहाँ तक पहुँचेंगे। दिस इज़ अबाउट एथिकल गवर्नेंस। ठीक है, गवर्नेंस, गवर्नमेंट एंड सोसाइटी म्यूचुअली इन्फ्लुएंसिंग रिलेशनशिप। सोसाइटी गवर्नमेंट को इन्फ्लुएंस करती है, गवर्नमेंट सोसाइटी को इन्फ्लुएंस करती है। कभी कभी गवर्नमेंट अगर प्रोएक्टिव है, वो लॉन्ग टर्म में चीज़ों को देखती है, बहुत प्रूडेंट गवर्नमेंट है, तो वो एथिकल मोरल स्टैंडर्ड्स को एलिवेट करने के लिए बहुत सारी इनिशिएटिव ले सकती है। और अगर सोसाइटी बहुत साउंड है, एथिकली मॉरली बहुत साउंड है, तो दैट सोसाइटी विल नेवर चूज अ गवर्नमेंट, विल नेवर इलेक्ट अ गवर्नमेंट विच इज़ मॉरली एथिकली डेफिशिएंट। और अगर गलती सरकार बन भी गई तो सोसाइटी पनिश कर सकती है, स्ट्रिंजेंटली पनिश करेगी उस गवर्नमेंट को, अगला मौका नहीं मिलेगा। तो बोथ ऑफ देम समझिए इंटरलॉक्ड, ये अच्छी चीज़ थी। ये गवर्नमेंट भी सोसाइटी को इन्फ्लुएंस कर सकती है और सोसाइटी भी गवर्नमेंट को बनाती है और उससे इन्फ्लुएंस कर सकती है। सो इज़ ए म्यूचुअली इन्फ्लुएंसिंग रिलेशनशिप। इसलिए हमें इम्प्रूवमेंट दोनों लेवल पे करना है। केवल गवर्नमेंट में ही एथिकल और मोरल गवर्नेंस, एथिकल गवर्नेंस की बात वर्ड जो है एक्सप्रेशन होता है ऐसे कि एथिकल गवर्नेंस आप गवर्नमेंट के साथ जुड़ गए, लेकिन एक्चुअली इट इज़ नॉट एसोसिएटेड विद गवर्नमेंट ओनली, it is concerned with society as well. Otherwise ethical governance cannot be sustained over a long period of time. This I think I have discussed most of the points. ये अलग अलग मॉडल ऑफ गवर्नेंस है, आप देख लीजिए। एथिकल गवर्नेंस में से एक है, इसलिए एंटरप्राइजिंग गवर्नेंस, कैटलिटिक गवर्नेंस, एथिकल गवर्नेंस, डिजिटल गवर्नेंस, इंक्लूसिव गवर्नेंस, देन प्रोएक्टिव गवर्नेंस, डेवलपमेंटल गवर्नेंस, एंटिसिपेटरी गवर्नेंस, कितने तरह के मॉडल। इसलिए ये हमने इसलिए आपको दिखाया कि इतने सारे मॉडल हैं। आप तो पहले गवर्नेंस को डील कर लो, व्हाट इज़ गवर्नेंस। और हमने कहा ना कि नेचर ऑफ द गवर्नेंस, नेचर, कंटेंट, ओरिएंटेशन ऑफ गवर्नेंस, देन इट्स इम्पैक्ट, टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट हैज़ बीन एबल टू ब्रिंग डिजायरेबल चेंजेस। ठीक है, व्हाट इज़ द डिफाइनिंग कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट, वो किस तरफ ज़्यादा टिल्टेड है, ओरिएंटेड है। ठीक है, ये सारी बातें मिलके एक गवर्नेंस मॉडल को जन्म देती है। इट इज़ नॉट नेसेसरी दैट गवर्नेंस कैन बी डिफाइंड ओनली इन टर्म्स ऑफ वन ऑफ दिस मॉडल्स। देयर कैन बी ए गवर्नमेंट द गवर्नेंस ऑफ विच इज सो साउंड दैट इट इनकॉर्पोरेट द एट्रीब्यूट्स ऑफ मोस्ट ऑफ दिस मॉडल। एक ही गवर्नमेंट, उसका गवर्नेंस ऐसा हो सकता है कि आप बोल सकते हैं कि ये एंटरप्राइजिंग गवर्नेंस है, एंटिसिपेटरी गवर्नेंस है, डेवलपमेंट गवर्नेंस है। सो गवर्नमेंट इज कंसर्न विद डेवलपमेंट, गवर्नेंस इज कंसर्न गवर्नेंस, द गवर्नमेंट इज एंटिसिपेटरी गवर्नमेंट, द गवर्नमेंट इज नॉट merely confined to the contemporary challenges and problems, it anticipate things and prepare for the same. Then the government, development governance, the focus of the government is on development. Development is a qualitative concept to bring qualitative change in the day-to-day life of the people. Proactive governance. So government is proactive. It anticipates and then prepares. More or less ये काफ़ी एक जैसे हैं, proactive and anticipatory governance. Then you have enterprising government. The government governance, enterprising. It believes in taking. If requires, it can make a departure from the existing train. It has that guts and the courage. ठीक है, so it can take initiative. It can take initiative for change. Enterprising government is constantly in action. It also encourages more and more of activities, expanding the scope of activities, taking new initiatives, taking calculated risk. Enterprising government. And a catalytic government, it keeps providing the required stimulus. ठीक है, stimulus for change and development. Catalytic government, वो किसी भी रिसोर्सेज को आइडल रहने नहीं देती. ठीक है, बजट में आप देखोगे, बजट में कुछ ऐसे प्रोविजंस होंगे, समय समय पे पॉलिसीज गवर्नमेंट की कुछ ऐसी होगी कि वो एनकरेज करती है लोगों को कि आप और एक्टिविटीज़ की तरफ बढ़े. इंटेंसिफाई द एक्टिविटीज़. Catalytic government, it comes up with one of the kind of stimulus packages or very progressive and very bold initiatives that the government is also taking initiative and government encourages others to take initiative. Catalytic government. So then ethical governance I have discussed, and then you have digital governance. So digital governance or e-governance, digital governance, a very creative and productive utilization of informational technology, tools, techniques, to provide best of the goods and services to society, to enforce accountability, to ensure public participation. ठीक है, then gradually removing the barriers between the government and society as far as deliverance of goods and services concerned. You are making the most creative and productive use of informational technology to bring down the wall of separation between government and society. आप बैठे दिल्ली में और दूर राजस्थान जैसलमेर के किसी गांव में भी गवर्नमेंट वहाँ तक हिट कर सकती है कि आपको कौन सी सुविधाएं मिल सकती हैं, नहीं मिल सकती हैं, क्या अवेलेबल है, नहीं है. आप तो जाएं, आधार कार्ड नंबर डालें, उस पोर्टल पर चले जाएं, आप देख लेंगे कि इस प्रोजेक्ट्स का कौन सा प्रोजेक्ट आपके यहाँ चल रहा है, आप उसमें एक बेनिफिशरी हैं या नहीं है. मतलब कि इम्पैक्ट क्वोशेंट एंड इम्पैक्ट जोन ऑफ द governance can be expanded, can be improved with the help of digital technology. Digital governance. So creative and productive use of informational technology to improve the quality of governance. Whether it is a matter of decision making or implementation, or exercise of vigilance, or for enforcement of accountability or control, deliverance of goods and services with the speed and economy, collecting feedback, applying correctives, all such things come within the bounds of digital governance. And then you have inclusive governance. The governance is truly representative in nature. Government is truly representative. Inclusive development is not possible without inclusive governance. In the process of governance, in the model of governance, you have representation from different groups and communities. All are involved. So you look after the interest of all. सबका साथ सबका विकास, मोदी जो बताते हैं उसके अंदर है. सबका साथ सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास, सबका प्रयास, ऐसे कुछ है चारों ही. ठीक, मतलब कि आप इस बात को समझते हैं कि विकास, डेवलपमेंट इज़ अ कलेक्टिव एंटरप्राइज. डेवलपमेंट इज़ ए मल्टी स्टारर स्क्रिप्ट. ये कोई ऐसी स्क्रिप्ट नहीं है जिसको कोई एक हीरो आकर के लिख के चला जाए, एग्जीक्यूट करके चला जाए. आपको बहुत सारे हीरोज़ चाहिए जो मिलकर काम करते हैं और डेवलपमेंट को पॉसिबल बनाते हैं. दैट्स द पॉइंट. तो इंक्लूसिव गवर्नेंस एंड इंक्लूसिव डेवलपमेंट उसके थ्रू आ जाए. ठीक है, जेन्युइन सेंस में. तो ये आपके इतने सारे मॉडल्स हो गए. और एक लास्ट में है मास्टर इन सब का, गुड गवर्नेंस. आप चाहें तो गुड गवर्नेंस मीन्स सबको इंक्लूड कर सकते हैं. गुड गवर्नेंस आपको पता ही है. अब गवर्नेंस गुड है या गुड नहीं है, ये हम और आप सरकार तय नहीं करेगी, ये तो जनता तय करेगी. जनता अगर ये पाती है कि गवर्नेंस में वो सब कुछ है जैसा कि उनका एक्सपेक्टेशन है, वो डेवलपमेंट, सिक्योरिटी, वेलफेयर, ये सारी चीज़ें, तब वो क्वालिफाई करेगा गुड के लिए. और ये गुड जो वर्ड है ये एक रिलेटिव एक्सप्रेशन है एंड अलोंग द स्केल ऑफ टाइम एंड प्लेस. ठीक है, गुड गवर्नेंस की परिभाषा जो 70s में रही होगी वो आज 2024 में नहीं होगी. तो द वर्ड गुड इज़ अ रिलेटिव कॉन्सेप्ट. टाइम और प्लेस, ये सब जो गुड गवर्नेंस इंडिया में है वही गुड गवर्नेंस का मॉडल वहाँ पे या उसके मायने अमेरिका में कुछ अलग होंगे, क्योंकि वहाँ की सोसाइटी एक अलग स्टेज में है, उनके क्राइटेरियंस अलग हैं और हमारे क्राइटेरियंस अलग हैं. तो यू हैव टाइम एंड प्लेस, ये जो फैक्टर है ये गुड को डिफाइन करता है. ठीक है, चेंजिंग एस्पिरेशंस एंड क्राइटेरियंस. सोसाइटी जो है उसके एस्पिरेशंस चेंज, सोसाइटी नेवर रिमेन स्टैटिक. द राइजिंग एस्पिरेशंस ऑफ सोसाइटी, नीड्स एंड एस्पिरेशंस ऑफ द सोसाइटी कीप चेंजिंग, एंड अकॉर्डिंगली द क्राइटेरियंस विच दे अप्लाई टू जज whether the governance is good or not, it keeps changing. So you cannot afford to remain complacent. So good governance, governance which is capable of bringing desirable changes in the society, and which to a great extent conforms to the needs and aspirations of the society. It conforms to the criterions set by the society, that qualifies for good governance. Good governance, and good governance concept is very broad and general in nature. It can accommodate the attributes of all these models of governance. One clear? In good governance, there can be attributes of all, most of them or two or more of them. It can be seen in the word good. और गुड गवर्नेंस में भी आप याद रखोगे, गुड गवर्नेंस में भी ऐसा नहीं कि पूरा का पूरा रिलेटिव कॉन्सेप्ट है. यू हैव ए स्टेबल कॉम्पोनेंट एंड देन यू हैव ए कॉम्पोनेंट विच इज चेंज ओरिएंटेड. You talk about honesty, integrity, you talk about objectivity, you talk about rationality. इन सब बातों का बोलते हैं. दिस इज द स्टेबल कॉम्पोनेंट. सो गुड गवर्नेंस इन इंडिया और गुड गवर्नेंस इन अमेरिका, वेयर एवर यू गो, द मोमेंट यू थिंक ऑफ गुड गवर्नेंस, ठीक है, देयर इज ए स्टेबल कॉम्पोनेंट, एंड दैट द गवर्नमेंट हैज टू बी वेरी मच ऑनेस्ट. सो गवर्नेंस शुड कन्फर्म टू द रिक्वायरमेंट ऑफ ऑनेस्टी, इंटीग्रिटी, और फॉर दैट रेशनैलिटी और ऑब्जेक्टिविटी और impersonality. आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट मॉडर्न डेमोक्रेटिक सेटअप. So these are the stabler component which remains the same all over the world. Wherever you think of good governance, you confirm democratic country I am talking about. So the stabler component, and then you have a component which is required to be changed from time to time. So enterprising government, catalytic government, getting a proactive government. This is something which is governed by the factor of time and place. So you have a stable component, and then you have a change-oriented component. I hope the point is clear. जैसे धर्म है, धर्म में रीति रिवाज कई तरह के उसमें बदलाव हो सकते हैं. धर्म में भी दो कंपोनेंट होगा. धर्म में एक इनर मोस्ट कोर होगा, एक इनर सर्किल, एक होगा आउटर. जो इनर सर्किल जो है, इनर मोस्ट जो कोर है, वो शाश्वत है, उसमें कोई बदलाव नहीं होगा. आप सत्य की बात करेंगे, आप अहिंसा की बात करेंगे, आप लव, कंपैशन, सेंस ऑफ ग्रेटिट्यूड की बात करेंगे, दैट रिमेन्स स्टेबल. अगर ये है नहीं तो कोई धर्म के लिए क्वालिफाई, कोई भी एक सोच वो धर्म के लिए क्वालिफाई कर ही नहीं सकती. दैट इज स्टेबल कंपोनेंट. उसके बाद जो चीज़ें हैं वो समय काल परिस्थिति के अनुसार उसमें बदलाव हो सकते हैं. आपके रीति रिवाज, कस्टम, ट्रेडिशन जो रिलीजन से जुड़े हुए हैं, उन सब में बदलाव हो सकते हैं, बट द इनर कंपोनेंट जो है दैट रिमेन्स द सेम. So you need, most of the places you find the two attributes, stability, attributes of stability and attributes of change. And progress is all about stability amid change and change amid stability. स्थायित्व में परिवर्तन लाना और परिवर्तन में स्थायित्व सुनिश्चित करना, इसे प्रगति कहते हैं. ये कहाँ गया, ये कुछ ऐसा है, ये बनाया हुआ है. इज द पॉइंट. ये देखिए, ये गुड गवर्नेंस में भी ये एक इनर कंपोनेंट है, ये इनर सर्किल, और ये है आउटर सर्किल. ठीक है, ये है कोर कंटेंट, स्टेबल कंपोनेंट. You talk about legitimacy. Again, I am talking about in the context of modern democratic welfare state. So legitimacy, openness, participation. Legitimacy, openness, participation, accountability, public participation in decision making process as far as possible, public accountability, then openness and transparency in the governance, and then legitimacy. The government should be legitimate one. ठीक है, जो गवर्नमेंट को लेजिटिमेटी नहीं है, ठीक है, तो वो वो गवर्नमेंट वो कैसे गुड गवर्नेंस लेकर के आएगी. केवल बात डिलीवरेंस ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज की नहीं है, मतलब मीन्स एंड एंड्स, बोथ ऑफ देम आर इंपॉर्टेंट. So the ultimate ends are being accomplished, but the means, through wrongful means, a government has been constituted. Wrongful means, ठीक है, and then even if it is efficient at one place, fine, it is providing goods and services, but wrongful means, it means in future new set of problems will come into existence because of this. अगर आपके मीन्स अगर सही नहीं हैं, एंड्स अगर सही भी हों, लेकिन मीन्स अगर सही नहीं है, तो wrongful deployment of wrongful means in the future may give birth to multifarious undeserving ends to be accomplished. नए प्रॉब्लम्स, नए एंड्स आपके सामने आ जाएंगे, उस नए प्रॉब्लम को आपको एड्रेस करना पड़ जाएगा. ठीक है, सो दिस लोपा, दैट इज लेजिटिमेसी, ओपननेस, पार्टिसिपेशन, अकाउंट, और भी कुछ इसके अंदर आ सकती है बेसिक चीज़ें. ठीक है, सो दिस है स्टेबल कंपोनेंट, एंड देन यू हैव दिस कंपोनेंट विच इज चेंज ओरिएंटेड. तो गुड गवर्नेंस में ये चीज़ें स्टेबल रहेंगी, आप जहाँ भी जाएंगे, लेकिन ये जो बाहर के सर्किल है, ये समय काल परिस्थिति के अनुसार, ये देखिए चेंज हो रहा है, समय के अनुसार इसमें कई सारे बदलाव, गवर्नमेंट को थोड़ा प्रोएक्टिव होना पड़ सकता है, डिजिटल गवर्नेंस की तरफ जाना पड़ सकता है, एंटिसिपेटरी गवर्नेंस आप उसमें चले जाएंगे। इस तरह से कई तरह के नए मॉडल डेवलप होते रहेंगे। तो आउटर रेल्म जो है दिस इज चेंज ओरिएंटेड, इसमें नई चीज़ें आती और जाती रहेंगी, और ये है कंपेरेटिवली स्टेबल। ठीक है, आज की बात करें या 100 साल बाद बात करें, आप हमेशा चाहेंगे कि कोई गुड गवर्नेंस का कॉन्सेप्ट आएगा ही नहीं, और गवर्नमेंट खुद अगर गवर्नमेंट को लेजिटिमेट तरीके से नहीं बनाया गया है, ओपननेस, ट्रांसपेरेंसी, अकाउंटेबिलिटी अगर नहीं है तो यू हैव ए स्टेबल कंपोनेंट एंड देन यू हैव अ चेंज ओरिएंटेड कंपोनेंट। ठीक है, और दोनों को मिला देते हैं स्टेबिलिटी एंड चेंज। प्रोग्रेस का मतलब जानते हैं, प्रोग्रेस इज ऑल अबाउट ब्रिंगिंग स्टेबिलिटी अमिड चेंज एंड चेंज अमिड स्टेबिलिटी, इट्स ऑल अबाउट। जब तक एक स्टेबल कंपोनेंट नहीं होगा तब तक चेंज हो ही नहीं सकता। फॉर एनी काइंड ऑफ चेंज टू टेक प्लेस यू नीड अ स्टेबल डिस्पोजिशन। जब तक एक मौलिक स्थिरता नहीं है, स्थायित्व नहीं है, बिना स्थायित्व के, बिना एक सेंट्रीपिटल फोर्स के आप वो चेंज नहीं हो सकता। तो स्टेबिलिटी एंड चेंज, यहाँ तक क्लियर। सो दिस इज अबाउट गुड गवर्नेंस। सो गुड गवर्नेंस में भी आपको याद रखना है, गुड गवर्नेंस में भी दो कंपोनेंट्स इंपॉर्टेंट, एक स्टेबल और एक है चेंज। स्टेबल कंपोनेंट और ये चेंज ओरिएंटेड, एक इनर सर्कल एंड दूसरा है आउटर सर्कल। पॉइंट क्लियर। तो दिस इज ऑल अबाउट एथिकल गवर्नेंस। एथिकल गवर्नेंस के साथ हमने बाकी कॉन्सेप्ट भी डिस्कस किया। आपको गवर्नेंस से फोकस करना है और फिर उसको क्वालिफाई कर दीजिए, उसके पहले वर्ड का कुछ भी नहीं है, कोई डिफिकल्ट कुछ भी नहीं। ठीक है, आगे नेक्स्ट लेक्चर में हम बाकी मॉडल्स डिस्कस करेंगे। ठीक है, ये कंप्लीट। आपने क्या क्या देखा, यहाँ से शुरुआत हुई थी आपकी, ये यहाँ शुरुआत हुई थी एथिकल गवर्नेंस। उसका फिर ये था एथिकल गवर्नेंस इन इंडिया, हाउ टू bring ethical governance in India, what are the measures which are required to be taken, long term short term measures। और फिर ये हम डिस्कस किया डिफरेंट मॉडल्स ऑफ गवर्नेंस, और एक मॉडल आ गया गुड गवर्नेंस। एंड गुड गवर्नेंस में जो गुड है, इट इज सो ब्रॉड और अकोमोडेटिव नेचर दैट एट्रीब्यूट्स ऑफ ऑल मॉडल्स ऑफ गवर्नेंस कैन बी ब्रॉट विद इन द बाउंड्स ऑफ इट। एंड द गुड में क्या होगा, गुड में एक स्टेबल कंपोनेंट है, एंड देन एज पर द चेंजिंग सिचुएशन सर्कमस्टांसेस न्यू एट्रीब्यूट्स आर रिक्वायर्ड टू बी, और न्यू फीचर्स आर रिक्वायर्ड टू बी अकोमोडेटेड। कई नई चीज़ों को लाना पड़ता है। तो ये गुड में ये टाइम और प्लेस, ये दो फैक्टर हैं, इसकी वजह से इस गुड की परिभाषा बदलती रहेगी, और इसका इनर मोस्ट कॉम्पोनेंट जो है वो तो स्टेबल रहेगा, लेकिन बाहर बहुत सारी नई डेवलपमेंट्स होते रहेंगे और गवर्नमेंट को नए तरीके से रिस्पॉन्ड करना पड़ेगा। क्यों? चेंजिंग एस्पिरेशंस ऑफ सोसाइटी, और द क्राइटेरियंस में भी चेंज होता है समय काल परिस्थिति के अनुसार। ठीक है, ये गुड गवर्नेंस। उसके बाद फिर हमने इसमें आपको ये कॉम्पोनेंट दिखा दिया। गुड गवर्नेंस आपको डेवलपमेंट के लिए दोनों चाहिए, प्रोग्रेस और डेवलपमेंट के चाहिए स्टेबिलिटी एंड चेंज। ये स्टेबिलिटी और ये हो गया चेंज। स्टेबिलिटी के बगैर चेंज संभव नहीं, और अगर चेंज ओरिएंटेड अगर आप नहीं है तो आप स्टेबल बहुत दिन तक नहीं रह पाएंगे। क्लियर? ये आपके दोनों हो गए 1 और 2 कंप्लीट। थैंक यू।